Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. I'm sorry it's been a couple of weeks. I will make it up to you. I've just been super busy and partly doing a lot of guitar recording, which is what I wanted to do today's video on. I'm going to show you the gear that I use. I'm going to tell you how I use it, and I'm going to show you a couple of tricks that I use to get my tones. Now, until a couple of years ago, I actually had my own studio space, which I was kind of renting from a friend, and I would mic up all of my amplifiers and do everything the old-fashioned way. But that place got flooded and I had to leave, and I migrated all my gear into my apartment. So my setup has changed a little bit over the last couple of years. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm using, and then I'm going to show you a couple of sounds and then show you some stuff that I do in the box, so to speak. So first up is amplifiers. I have 3 amps and I use them all for different gain stages. I have my divided by 13 FTR 37, which I use pretty much exclusively for pretty clean stuff. I have my Suhr Badger 30, which also has a great clean sound actually, which I use quite a lot. It actually stays a little bit cleaner than the divided by 13 does when you're sort of driving it. And it also has a bunch of great kind of mid-gain marshally sounds in it. And then I have my Mezzabarba MZero Overdrive for the heavy stuff, which is what I've been doing today. I do have 2 cabinets at the moment. I have my divided by 13 cabinet, which has a G12H and a Celestian Blue in it, and I have my Port City 2x12 oversized cab, which has a Creamback and a Veteran 30 in it, I think, yeah. Which I'm only using for live shows at the moment for obvious reasons. What I'm doing in this apartment is using the Suhr Reactive Load as my load box and my cabinet simulator, essentially. It's got a bunch of really great sounding IRs in it. All of them sound really good, and I will use different models with different heads, or specifically for different guitars, or just if I want to occupy a kind of specific frequency range within a track. Now, before I actually hit whichever amp I'm using, I'm going via my little home pedal board, which I wired this up so I had a kind of practice board whenever I just had like a moment to myself to just sit and play. But how I'm using it at the moment is as my my dry effects only board for recording. So I have a compressor on there from Wampler. I have the Animal by Rockett pedals. I have a King of Tone by Analog Man, and then I have a couple of different modulation effects. The Lil Wave chorus from Red 7, an old Deja vibe, Univibe from Fulltone, and I'm also using the trem stuff from the Flint circuit. So before we go any further, I'm just going to show you guys a couple of sounds. This is the clean side of the Mezzabarba. It's kind of like a fat clean kind of thing, which means that if I boost it, it'll break up really easily. So here's the same thing, but with a compressor. From there, we have a couple of flavors of overdrive. So this is the Animal. And here's the King of Tone. And we have the Univibe. And we have the little wave. And the harmonic trem from the Flint. Jumping over to the overdrive side of the M0, that sounds like this. Now, here's where things get kind of interesting. So what I used to do is run all of my pedals into the amp or in the effects loop of the amp and then just track it like that. But what I've started doing more recently is kind of like an artificial wet, dry, wet setup. So I will go from the Suhr reactive load into my Apollo Twin interface in mono, and I'll have my mono audio channel. But then what I'll do is set up a bus or set up several stereo buses within the DAW. So for anyone who doesn't know, if we have an effect as an insert, it means that the whole signal is running through it. Whereas a bus is a bit like having a sort of tributary off a river. It's like having a small stream of the signal going off somewhere else to be affected. We could also think of it as being like an analog dry path within a rack system. And I will tend to have usually kind of 2 or 3 effects set up there. At the moment, I've been using a little bit of a micro pitch shift effect. All of the plugins that I'm using at the moment are from Sound Toys because they do a really cool H3000 type thing, as well as having a second bus setup for delays. At the moment, it's like a Memory Man type thing, and then a third bus for a plate reverb. And what it means is that we're still going to have our dry channel down the middle, kind of like our dry cab, but then we're going to have wet effects, which are 100% wet in stereo. So I'm going to show you what that sounds like now. First up is the micro pitch shift. Next up, going to add some delay. This is kind of like a dark Memory Man style delay in stereo. And finally, some plate reverb. And the cool thing about having all of those on separate buses is that it's super easy to adjust the levels so that they sit just right within a track, and makes your guitar sound really big. Now, you don't necessarily want to do that all the time, but you can also set up kind of mono effects buses if you wanted to do something that wasn't quite as broad. You can still run effects in line through the pedal board if, again, you want something that sits really narrowly within the mix. But it's great to have these options. I've been really happy with the sounds of the Sound Toys plugins, which is the Micro Shift, the Echo Boy, and the Little Plate. The last thing I'll do is a bit of subtle EQing. So this usually just involves cutting some of the superfluous low end. That's going to be different depending on what your part is, how much you cut. And to determine that, what I tend to do is cut from the opposite end, from the highs, all the way back down to kind of like, 60 hertz or something, and then bring it up until I start to hear useful frequencies. And then that tells me how much I'm cutting, whether it's like 75 or 120 or whatever. The only other thing that I'll really do is cut some of the boxiness out of the low mids. So this is again going to vary depending on the part you're doing, but a good place to start is often around 250 hertz. So I will often boost in like a kind of narrow Q, so I can find the offending frequencies, and then I cut them by between sort of 2 and 4 dB. And that's it, folks. That's how I am currently going about recording guitars in my little home studio setup. I think in the future, one day I would like to be running from the Suhr reactive load into another processor, maybe something like an Eventide Eclipse. But for now, plugins are doing the job just fine, and I've been really happy with the results. I hope maybe you've got something useful from this. If not, I hope you've enjoyed just having a little look around my mini home setup, and I'll see you guys real soon. Take care. Bye bye.